Coldwater State Penitentiary had been closed for 8 years. The prisoners were transferred. The guards moved on. The building was left to rot. High concrete walls. Razor wire. Guard towers with broken windows. It stood on the edge of town like a monument to punishment and pain. But on a scorching July night in 2023, someone cut through the fence and slipped inside. Her name was Helen Carter. She was 74 years old. She was running from something. And she was about to discover that the worst prison isn't made of concrete and steel. It's made of guilt and secrets we carry inside ourselves. What Helen found in death row wasn't just the past. It was her past. And the truth waiting for her in that cell would force her to confront the one decision that had haunted her for 50 years. Stay with me because this is a story about justice, mercy, and the unbearable weight of knowing you destroyed an innocent man's life. Helen Carter had been a public defender for 32 years. She represented people who couldn't afford lawyers. Murderers, thieves, drug dealers, people society had given up on. Helen believed everyone deserved a defense. Everyone deserved their day in court. She was good at her job. She won cases other lawyers wouldn't touch. She got guilty people acquitted on technicalities. She got sentences reduced. She got deals made. But there was one case that haunted her. One case that ruined her career and destroyed her life. The case of Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb was 23 years old when he was arrested for murder in 1973. A store clerk had been shot during a robbery. Marcus was identified by 2 witnesses. He had a record. Petty theft. Drug possession. He fit the profile. The prosecutor wanted the death penalty. Marcus said he was innocent. He said he was home with his grandmother that night. But his grandmother had dementia. Her testimony was worthless. The public defender's office assigned the case to Helen. She was 34 years old. Ambitious. Overworked. Handling 40 cases at once. Helen spent 3 hours with Marcus. She looked at the evidence. 2 eyewitnesses who said they saw him. Security camera footage that was grainy but showed someone matching his description. The gun was never found, but ballistics matched guns he'd been known to carry. Helen made a decision. She told Marcus to take a plea deal. Plead guilty to second-degree murder. 25 years instead of death. Marcus refused. He said he was innocent. Helen told him he was being stupid. Told him the jury would convict him. Told him he'd die in prison if he didn't take the deal. Marcus looked her in the eye and said, "I didn't do this. I won't say I did." So they went to trial. Helen was unprepared. She had too many other cases. She didn't investigate thoroughly. She didn't check the witnesses' backgrounds. She didn't push for better camera footage. She gave a decent closing argument, but her heart wasn't in it. She believed Marcus was guilty. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. First-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to death. Marcus Webb was sent to death row at Coldwater State Penitentiary. He was 24 years old. Helen moved on to the next case. 22 years later, in 1995, new evidence emerged. DNA testing that hadn't existed in 1973. The DNA from the crime scene didn't match Marcus Webb. A witness recanted, admitting police had pressured him to identify Marcus. Security footage was re-examined by experts who said the person in the video was 3 inches shorter than Marcus. Marcus Webb had spent 22 years on death row for a murder he didn't commit. Helen's inadequate defense had sent an innocent man to prison. Marcus was released. Exonerated. But the damage was done. Helen's career imploded. She was investigated. Disciplined. Not disbarred, but her reputation was destroyed. Other cases she'd handled were reviewed. More questions were raised. Helen couldn't handle it. The guilt. The shame. The knowledge that she had been so certain Marcus was guilty that she hadn't fought hard enough. She quit practicing law. Started drinking. Her marriage fell apart. Her kids stopped talking to her. She spent the next 28 years trying to forget Marcus Webb. Trying to convince herself she'd done her best with the information she had. But she knew the truth. She had been lazy. Overconfident. She had failed him. Last month, Helen learned that Marcus Webb had died. Cancer. He was 68 years old. He'd spent 22 years in prison and 28 years free. The obituary mentioned that he never married. Never had children. Never recovered from what prison had done to him. He worked menial jobs. Lived alone. And he died alone. Helen read the obituary and something inside her broke. She walked out of her tiny apartment, started walking, and didn't stop. 3 days later, hungry and exhausted and desperate, she found herself standing outside Coldwater State Penitentiary, the place where Marcus had spent 22 years waiting to die. Helen didn't make a conscious decision. She just acted. She cut through the fence with bolt cutters she found in an abandoned shed. And she walked into the prison. The prison was terrifying in the dark. Guard towers loomed overhead like silent sentinels. Cell blocks stretched out in every direction. The air smelled like rust and decay and something else. Desperation. Years of human suffering soaked into concrete. Helen's footsteps echoed as she walked through the main corridor. Cells on either side, doors open, empty. She chose a cell at random and stepped inside. It was small. 8 feet by 10 feet. A metal bed frame with no mattress. A toilet with no seat. A tiny window with bars. This had been someone's home. Someone's entire world. For years. Maybe decades. Helen lay down on the metal bed frame. It was hard and cold. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. But all she could think about was Marcus. Had he been in this cell? Had he looked out this window? Had he counted the days until his execution? Helen had never visited him. Not once in 22 years. She told herself it was inappropriate. That it would compromise her professional boundaries. But the truth was simpler. She was ashamed. She knew she'd failed him. And she couldn't face him. Now he was dead. And she would never get the chance to apologize. Helen woke at dawn. Sunlight streamed through the barred window. She sat up and looked around the cell more carefully. Someone had scratched words into the wall. Days without light, 347. Days without hope, all of them. Helen traced the words with her fingers. Someone had lived in this cell for almost a year. Someone had been so desperate they carved their suffering into concrete. Helen stood and walked out of the cell. She started exploring the prison systematically. Cell block A, cell block B. The cafeteria with its long metal tables. The yard with its high walls. The library with its moldy books still on shelves. And then she found it. The door marked death row. Helen stood in front of it for 10 minutes before she could make herself open it. Death row was different from the other cell blocks. The cells were smaller. More isolated. Soundproof. There were 12 cells in total. 6 on each side of a narrow corridor. Helen walked slowly down the corridor looking into each cell. Most were empty. But cell number 7 had something the others didn't. Boxes. Dozens of cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. Helen stepped inside. The boxes were labeled with years. 1973, 1974, 1975, all the way to 1995. Helen opened the first box. Inside were letters. Letters written by Marcus Webb. Letters to his mother. His grandmother. His lawyer. Helen. Letters he had written from death row. Most had never been sent. Helen sat on the floor and started reading. The first letter was dated August 15, 1973. 1 week after his sentencing. Dear Mama. I'm scared. They say I'm going to die for something I didn't do. My lawyer doesn't believe me. Nobody believes me. But I need you to know. I didn't kill that man. I wasn't there. I swear on everything I love I didn't do this. Helen read letter after letter. Marcus writing to his mother about the trial. About Helen's defense. About his certainty that the truth would come out. About his faith that justice would prevail. The letters from the first year were full of hope. But as the years passed, the tone changed. The hope faded. Marcus wrote about the other men on death row. About watching them get executed one by one. About the sounds they made. About the smell of fear. About the guards who treated them like animals. About the loneliness. About the rage. About slowly losing his mind. Helen found a letter dated January 10, 1982. 9 years into his sentence. Dear Miss Carter. I know you probably don't remember me. You had so many clients. But I think about you every day. I wonder if you ever think about me. If you ever wonder if you made a mistake. I want you to know that I forgive you. I know you were doing your job. I know you believed I was guilty. Everyone did. But I wasn't. And I'm going to die for something I didn't do. When that happens, I need you to know that I don't hate you. I'm just sad. Sad that the system failed. Sad that nobody cared enough to look closer. Sad that I'll never get to have a life. Marcus Webb. Helen couldn't breathe. Marcus had forgiven her. From death row. While facing execution. While suffering every single day because of her inadequate defense. He had forgiven her. Helen put the letter down and picked up another box. This one was labeled personal effects. Inside were Marcus's belongings. A watch that had stopped working. A Bible with passages underlined. Photographs of his family. And a journal. Helen opened the journal with shaking hands. The journal covered 22 years. Entries written in small, careful handwriting. Marcus documented everything. What he ate. What he read. What he thought about. Who got executed and when. His declining mental health. His nightmares. His prayers. His anger. His despair. And his innocence. On every single page, Marcus maintained his innocence. I didn't do this. I didn't kill that man. I need someone to believe me. But nobody did. Not the jury. Not the guards. Not Helen. Nobody. Before we continue with what Helen discovered in those boxes, I need to ask you something. If you're watching this and feeling the weight of Helen's guilt, if you've ever made a decision that destroyed someone else's life, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel exists to tell the hard stories. The stories about mistakes we can't undo. The guilt we can't escape. Your subscription helps us continue sharing these important truths. Now let's see what else Helen found in death row. Helen spent 3 days reading everything in those boxes. She barely ate. Barely slept. She was consumed by Marcus's words. By his suffering. By the injustice of what had happened to him. But on the 4th day Helen heard something. Footsteps. Someone else was in the prison. Helen froze. She listened. The footsteps were coming closer. Getting louder. And then a voice. Oh, is someone here? Helen didn't answer. The footsteps stopped outside the death row cell. A man appeared in the doorway. He was maybe 50 years old. But thin. He stared at Helen sitting on the floor surrounded by boxes. Who are you? He asked. Helen stood up slowly. My name is Helen. She hesitated. I'm just looking for somewhere to stay. The man's expression softened. I'm Robert. I live here. Well, not here, but in the prison. I've been staying in cell block C for about a year. Helen blinked. You live here? Why? Robert shrugged. Same reason you're here probably. Nowhere else to go. He looked at the boxes. What is all this? Helen explained about Marcus Webb. About being his lawyer. About failing him. About finding his letters. Robert listened quietly. Then he said, come with me. There's something you need to see. Robert led Helen through the prison to cell block C. Inside one of the cells he had created a makeshift home. A real mattress. A camping stove. Supplies. But what caught Helen's attention was the wall. It was covered with photographs. Dozens of them. Faces. Names. Dates. Who are they? Helen asked. Robert's voice was heavy. Every person who was executed at Coldwater. 43 people over 50 years. I've been researching them. Trying to tell their stories. He pointed to one photo. That's my brother. Dwayne Lewis. Executed in 2004. He was innocent too. Helen stared at the wall. Your brother? Robert nodded. He was convicted of killing a police officer. False testimony from a jailhouse informant who got his own sentence reduced for cooperating. No physical evidence. Circumstantial case. Bad lawyer who didn't investigate. Sound familiar? Helen felt sick. How many of these people were innocent? Robert's smile was bitter. I've documented 12 cases where serious questions exist about guilt. 12 innocent people probably executed. But nobody cares. Once they're dead, the case is closed. No one wants to admit the system got it wrong. Over the next week, Robert showed Helen his research. Files he'd compiled on every person executed at Coldwater. Some were clearly guilty. Confessed. Had overwhelming evidence. But others, like Marcus and Dwayne, had cases that fell apart under scrutiny. Witnesses who recanted. Evidence that was questionable. DNA that didn't match. Police misconduct. Inadequate defense. The system had failed over and over again. And the innocent died alongside the guilty. Helen asked Robert why he was doing this. Why live in an abandoned prison? Why dedicate his life to documenting these cases? Robert looked at her like the answer was obvious. Because someone has to remember them. Because everyone deserves to have their story told. Even if they're dead. Especially if they're dead. Helen and Robert began working together. They expanded the documentation. They researched not just the executed prisoners, but the lawyers who defended them, the prosecutors who convicted them, the judges who sentenced them, the system that killed them. And they found a pattern. Overworked public defenders. Prosecutors who cared more about conviction rates than justice. Judges who were elected and feared looking soft on crime. A system designed to convict, not to seek truth. Marcus Webb wasn't an exception. He was the norm. One day while researching, Helen found something that made her blood run cold. A prosecutor's memo from Marcus's case. Internal communication that was supposed to be confidential but had been leaked years later. The prosecutor had written, "Webb might not be our guy, but he fits the profile. Jury will believe he did it. He has priors. Nobody will care if we're wrong. Let's push for death penalty. Get this case closed." The prosecutor had known Marcus might be innocent. And he'd prosecuted him anyway. He'd pushed for death. Because it was easier than finding the real killer. Because Marcus was expendable. Helen showed Robert the memo. "This is proof. Proof that they knew he might be innocent." Robert nodded. "Yeah." And nothing happened. The prosecutor became a judge. He retired with a pension and a good reputation. Nobody was ever held accountable. Helen felt rage building inside her. How is that possible? How can they get away with this? Robert's voice was quiet. "Same way you got away with it. Same way I got away with it. We all failed them. You were his lawyer and you didn't fight hard enough. I was Dwayne's brother and I didn't believe him when he said he was innocent. We're all complicit. The system works because good people don't fight back." Helen wanted to argue. To defend herself. But she couldn't. Because Robert was right. She had been complicit. She had been part of the system. She had valued efficiency over justice. She had assumed guilt instead of fighting for innocence. And Marcus had paid the price. Helen looked at the wall of faces. 43 people. 12 probably innocent. And she was responsible for one of them. "How do you live with it?" Helen asked quietly. Robert looked at her. "You don't. You just survive. And you try to make sure it doesn't happen again. That's all you can do." Helen is about to discover that Marcus left something else behind. Something that will change everything she thought she knew about forgiveness and redemption. But before we continue, if this story is making you think about justice, about the flaws in our systems, about the innocent people who suffer, I need you to do something. Hit that like button. Leave a comment telling me what you think about the death penalty. About public defenders. About wrongful convictions. And make sure you're subscribed because what Helen discovers next will break your heart. Now let's continue. Helen and Robert had been living in Coldwater for 2 months when they found the storage room. It was hidden behind a locked door in the administrative wing. Robert picked the lock with a piece of wire. Inside were filing cabinets, boxes of documents and old video equipment. Kiss tapes. Dozens of them. Labeled with dates and prisoner numbers. "What are these?" Helen asked. Robert picked up one tape. Final statements. Before executions, prisoners were allowed to make a final statement. These must be recordings. They found an old TV and VCR in the guard break room. Robert hooked it up. It still worked. They started watching the tapes chronologically. Most of the final statements were what you'd expect. Apologies to victims' families. Proclamations of faith. Last words to loved ones. Some prisoners maintained their innocence. Some admitted their guilt. Each tape was 5 to 10 minutes long. Each one was devastating. Watching someone speak their last words knowing they would be dead in hours was unbearable. But Helen and Robert watched them all. Because someone needed to witness. Someone needed to remember. And then they found Marcus's tape. Tape number 37. Marcus Webb. April 12, 1995. The day before he was supposed to be executed. The day before DNA evidence proved his innocence. Helen's hands shook as Robert pushed play. Marcus appeared on the screen. He looked older than 24. Prison had aged him. His hair was gray. His face was lined. His eyes were tired. But his voice was steady. "My name is Marcus Webb. Tomorrow I'm supposed to die for a murder I didn't commit. I've spent 22 years in this prison. 22 years on death row. 22 years telling anyone who would listen that I'm innocent. Nobody believed me." Marcus looked directly at the camera. "I want to talk to my lawyer." Helen Carter. I know you're not watching this. You probably don't even remember me. But I need to say this anyway. I forgive you. I know you thought you were doing your job. I know you had too many cases. I know you believed I was guilty. Everyone did. But you were supposed to fight for me. You were the only person who could have saved me. And you didn't. Not because you were evil. But because you didn't care enough. Helen's tears were falling now. She couldn't look away from the screen. Marcus continued. I've had 22 years to think about justice. About mercy. About forgiveness. And I've learned something. The system that put me here isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. It's designed to punish poor people. Black people. People without power. People like me. I was an easy target. I had a record. I fit the description. Nobody cared if I was actually guilty. They just needed someone to blame. Someone to punish. And I was convenient. Helen Carter, you were part of that system. You did what the system wanted. You processed me. You didn't fight. And I don't hate you for it. I'm just sad. Sad that you could have been different. Could have been better. But you chose not to be. Marcus took a deep breath. Tomorrow I'm going to die. I'm 46 years old. I never got married. Never had kids. Never had a career. Never traveled. Never lived. Because 22 years ago I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And nobody cared enough to look closer. If you're watching this after I'm dead, Miss Carter, I want you to know something. This is on you. Not just on the prosecutor or the judge or the jury. On you. Because you could have saved me. And you didn't. I forgive you. But I hope you never forget me. I hope Marcus Webb haunts you for the rest of your life. Because if you forget, then I died for nothing. And that would be the worst injustice of all. The screen went black. Helen was sobbing. Robert turned off the TV. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally, Robert spoke. He was right, you know. Helen nodded. I know. Robert looked at her. So what are you going to do about it? Helen wiped her face. I don't know. What can I do? He's dead. I can't bring him back. I can't undo what I did. Robert stood up. Oh, but you can make sure it doesn't happen again. You can fight back against the system. You can tell his story. You can demand change. You can do now what you should have done 50 years ago. Fight. Helen looked at the wall of faces. 43 people. 12 probably innocent. And she had been responsible for one of them. She had been part of the system that killed them. But she didn't have to be anymore. She could choose differently. He could fight back. She could make Marcus's death mean something. Helen stood up. Tell me what to do. Robert smiled. First, we document everything. Every case. Every injustice. Every failure. Then we go public. We expose the system. We demand accountability. We make sure people know what happens in places like this. And we make sure it never happens again. Over the next 6 months, Helen and Robert turned Coldwater State Penitentiary into a research center. They compiled files on all 43 executions. They tracked down family members. They interviewed former prisoners, guards, lawyers. They built a comprehensive picture of systemic failure. And then they contacted journalists, activists, lawyers. They invited them to the prison. They showed them the evidence, the letters, the videos, the documentation. And slowly people started paying attention. A journalist wrote an article. 2 public defenders living in abandoned prison expose wrongful executions. The article went viral. More journalists came. TV news. Documentaries. Helen and Robert told Marcus's story. Dwayne's story. The stories of all 12 questionable cases. They showed the prosecutor's memo. The inadequate defenses. The false testimony. The evidence of innocence that was ignored. Public outrage grew. People demanded investigations. Accountability. Change. Helen's fight is about to go national. But before we see what happens next, I need to tell you something. This story isn't just about one woman's guilt. It's about a system that fails innocent people every single day. If you believe that justice matters more than conviction rates, if you believe that innocent people shouldn't die because of lazy lawyering or ambitious prosecutors, you need to subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories that make people uncomfortable. The stories that demand change. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. Share this video. And stay with me because Helen's mission is about to change everything. The governor ordered an investigation. All 43 cases from Coldwater were reviewed. 12 cases were flagged for serious concerns. DNA testing was ordered where possible. Witnesses were re-interviewed. Police records were examined. It took 2 years, but the results were devastating. 8 of the 43 people executed at Coldwater were definitively innocent. Not probably innocent. Not questionably guilty. Definitively innocent. DNA proved it. Witnesses recanted. Real killers confessed. 8 innocent people had been killed by the state. Marcus Webb was one of them. Dwayne Lewis was another. The public response was immediate and fierce. Protests. Lawsuits. Demands for accountability. The prosecutor who had written that memo about Marcus was investigated. He was disbarred. Charges were considered but ultimately not filed because the statute of limitations had expired. Other prosecutors and judges from those cases faced scrutiny. Some resigned. Some were disciplined. But none went to prison. Helen watched all of this unfold from Coldwater. She had become a public figure. People wanted interviews. She was asked to testify before legislative committees, to speak at rallies, to write articles. Everyone wanted to know how she could live with what she'd done. Helen was honest, brutally honest. "I can't live with it," she told a reporter. "I wake up every day knowing I killed an innocent man. Not directly. But my laziness, my indifference, my failure to fight, it killed him as surely as the needle in his arm. I can't undo that. I can't forgive myself. I don't deserve forgiveness. All I can do is make sure it doesn't happen again." The interview went viral. Helen became a symbol. Not of redemption, but of accountability. Of someone refusing to let herself off the hook. Of someone using her guilt to create change rather than seeking absolution. The state legislature passed new laws. Mandatory minimum standards for public defender caseloads. Better funding. Required investigation hours. Automatic DNA testing in capital cases. Better training for defense attorneys. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. And Helen had helped make it happen. Marcus's death had finally meant something. Not redemption. Not justice. But meaning. His suffering had created change. Helen hoped that was worth something. She hoped Marcus would have wanted that. But Helen still hadn't dealt with the families. Marcus's family. The other families of the innocent executed. They deserved to hear from her. Deserved an apology. Deserved something. Helen started reaching out. Some families refused to meet with her. He understood. But some agreed. The first was Marcus's sister, Diane. She was 68 years old now. She agreed to meet Helen at Coldwater. Helen was terrified. But she owed Diane this. She owed Marcus this. Diane walked through the prison slowly, looking at everything. Helen showed her the death row cell. The boxes of letters. The video of Marcus's final statement. Diane watched the entire thing without speaking. When it ended, she turned to Helen. Her eyes were dry but her voice shook. "My brother wrote me letters from here. Every week for 22 years. He told me he was innocent. And I believed him. But nobody else did. I tried to get lawyers to help. Journalists. Anyone. Nobody cared. He died while I was still fighting for him. I never got to say goodbye." Helen's voice broke. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I failed him. I failed you. I destroyed your family because I was lazy and arrogant and didn't care enough. There's nothing I can say that makes that okay. Nothing I can do that brings him back. But I need you to know that I think about him every single day. That I'm haunted by what I did. That I will spend the rest of my life trying to make sure no other family goes through what yours did." Diane looked at Helen for a long moment. Then she said something Helen didn't expect. "I don't forgive you." Helen nodded. "I understand." Diane continued. "But I'm glad you're doing this work. I'm glad my brother's death meant something. I'm glad you're fighting now even though you didn't fight then. That doesn't erase what you did. It doesn't bring Marcus back. But it's something. And maybe that's all we get." Helen whispered, "It's more than I deserve." Diane shook her head. "It's not about what you deserve. It's about what the next Marcus Webb deserves. The next innocent person facing death. They deserve better than my brother got. They deserve lawyers who fight. A system that cares about truth more than convictions. You can't give that to Marcus. But you can give it to them." Helen met with 7 other families over the next year. Each meeting was different. Some were angry. Some were grieving. Some were numb. But all of them said variations of the same thing. We don't forgive you. But keep fighting. Don't let our loved ones die for nothing. Make their deaths mean something. And Helen did. She dedicated the rest of her life to the work. She trained public defenders. She testified at trials. She investigated questionable convictions. She fought for the innocent people still sitting on death row waiting for lawyers who wouldn't fail them the way she had failed Marcus. Helen Carter is 78 years old now. She still lives at Coldwater State Penitentiary. The state tried to demolish it, but Helen and Robert fought to preserve it. They turned it into a memorial and education center. The Coldwater Project, a museum of injustice. People come from all over the country to visit, to learn about the 43 people executed there, to see the letters and videos, to understand how the system fails. Students come. Law students, criminal justice students, regular people who want to understand. Death row has been preserved exactly as it was. Cell number 7, where Marcus spent 22 years, is the centerpiece. His letters are displayed. His journal. His final statement plays on a loop. Visitors stand in that tiny cell and try to imagine 22 years. Try to imagine knowing you're innocent and nobody believes you. Try to imagine waiting to die for something you didn't do. Many visitors cry. Some get angry. All of them leave changed. That's the point. Helen wants people to be uncomfortable. Wants them to confront the ugly truth about the system. Wants them to demand better. Robert still lives at Coldwater too. His brother Dwayne's cell is preserved as well. Robert gives tours, tells stories, makes sure every person executed there is remembered by name. It's become his life's work. His purpose. Helen and Robert are friends now. Family really. Bound together by guilt and grief and a shared mission. They're not redeemed. They both carry the weight of their failures every day. But they've found a way to carry it together. To use it. To transform it into something that matters. Helen receives letters constantly. From law students who visited and were inspired to become public defenders. From journalists writing about wrongful convictions. From families of the wrongfully convicted asking for help. Helen responds to every single one. She helps when she can. She connects people with resources. She testifies. She fights. Every day. Because that's all she can do. Fight for the living in a way she didn't fight for Marcus. Make sure his death meant something. But Helen has never stopped thinking about that video. Marcus's final words. I hope Marcus Webb haunts you for the rest of your life. He does. Every night Helen dreams about him. Sometimes he's angry. Sometimes he's sad. Sometimes he just looks at her with those tired eyes and says nothing. And Helen wakes up knowing she deserves to be haunted. Knowing that forgiveness would be easier than this. That absolution would be a relief. But she doesn't deserve relief. She deserves to carry Marcus with her until she dies. And she does. Willingly. Because that's the least she can do. One afternoon, a young woman visits Coldwater. She's 25. A law student. She tells Helen she wants to be a public defender. Helen asks why. The woman says, because I saw Marcus Webb's video. And I don't want to be the kind of lawyer you were. I want to be the kind of lawyer you wish you had been. Helen feels both shame and pride at those words. Good, Helen says. Make me obsolete. Be so good at your job that places like this become impossible. That people like Marcus are protected. That the system actually works. The young woman nods seriously. I will. Helen believes her. Helen Carter took shelter in an abandoned prison after running from her guilt. She was 74 years old, broken by the knowledge that her failure had killed an innocent man. She could have stayed lost in that guilt. Could have drowned in it. But instead she found Marcus's letters. She found other victims. She found a purpose. Not redemption. Purpose. The purpose of making sure her failure meant something. That Marcus's death meant something. That innocent people would be protected in ways he wasn't. Old woman took shelter in abandoned prison. What she found in death row changed her life. That's the headline. But the truth is more complicated. What Helen found didn't change her life. It gave her life meaning for the first time. For 50 years she had been a lawyer who didn't care enough. Who chose convenience over justice. Who failed the people who needed her most. And Marcus Webb paid the price. She can't undo that. She can't bring him back. She can't earn forgiveness. But she can fight. Every single day. For the rest of her life. For every person still sitting on death row. For every innocent person facing a system designed to convict them. For justice that actually means something. The Coldwater Project has helped exonerate 17 people so far. 17 people who would have died without Helen and Robert's work. That's 17 Marcus Webbs who got to go home. Who got their lives back. Who got justice. It doesn't erase what happened to Marcus. Nothing can. But it means his death wasn't for nothing. That his 22 years of suffering created something. Changed something. Saved someone. And maybe that's the best any of us can hope for. That our pain means something. That our failures teach something. That we can use our guilt to create change instead of just carrying it until we die. Helen Carter is 78 years old. She lives in a prison. She is haunted by a man she failed 50 years ago. She will never forgive herself. She will never be redeemed. But she fights. Every single day. For justice. For the innocent. For the people the system has forgotten. And in doing that, she's become the lawyer she should have been 5 decades ago. Too late for Marcus. But not too late for the next person. Not too late for change. And sometimes that has to be enough. Thank you for staying with me through Helen's story. This was a hard one. There's no happy ending here. Marcus is still dead. Helen still failed him. But the work continues. Real people are being saved because of what Helen is doing now. If this story made you think about our justice system, about innocence and guilt, about the failures that kill people, then I need you to do something. Subscribe to this channel right now. We tell the stories that matter. The uncomfortable truths. The guilt that can't be erased but can be transformed into purpose. Like this video. Share it with someone who needs to understand how the system fails innocent people. Leave a comment telling me what you think. Do you believe Helen can ever be redeemed? Do you believe Marcus would want her to be? Should people who fail this catastrophically get a second chance? These are hard questions, and I want to hear your answers. Most importantly, if you know someone studying law, someone thinking about becoming a public defender, someone working in criminal justice, share this video with them. Let Marcus Webb's story be a warning. Let Helen Carter's failure be a lesson. Let the work being done at Coldwater inspire them to be better. To fight harder. To care more. Because the next Marcus Webb is sitting in a jail cell right now, waiting for a lawyer who will actually fight for them. And that lawyer could be someone watching this video. The stories of those who suffer are the ones that change the world. Marcus suffered for 22 years because Helen didn't fight hard enough. Now Helen suffers every day and uses that suffering to fight for others. That's not redemption. That's responsibility. That's accountability. That's what it looks like when you refuse to let your guilt destroy you and instead let it drive you to create change. Visit Coldwater Project online if you want to learn more about wrongful convictions. Donate if you can. Volunteer if you're able. And if you're a lawyer or studying to be one, remember Marcus Webb. Remember that your laziness can kill. Your indifference can destroy. Your failure to fight can end innocent lives. Don't be the lawyer Helen was. Be the lawyer she wishes she had been. Be the lawyer Marcus deserved. Thank you for being part of this community. Thank you for caring about these stories. Thank you for believing that justice matters and that the innocent deserve to be protected. Until next time, remember that guilt can either destroy us or drive us. Helen chose to let it drive her. What will you choose? And one more thing. If this story haunted you the way Marcus Webb haunts Helen, that's good. That means you have a conscience. That means you care. Don't let that feeling fade. Let it motivate you. Let it push you to demand better. To be better. To fight for justice even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. Because that's what Marcus deserved. That's what every innocent person deserves. And we all have a responsibility to make sure the system doesn't fail them the way it failed him. Subscribe, share, comment, and most importantly, never forget Marcus Webb. Never forget the 8 innocent people executed at Coldwater. Never forget that justice isn't automatic. It requires people who care. People who fight. People who refuse to accept failure. Be one of those people. The world needs more of them. Thank you for watching. Until next time, remember the stories of those who suffer. Because they're the ones that remind us why justice matters. Why fighting matters. Why every single person deserves someone who will stand up for them. Even when it's hard. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when they're poor or black or powerless. Especially then. That's when fighting matters most. Rest in peace, Marcus Webb. Your death meant something. Your story is being told. You are not forgotten.